Now, this Sunday, the 2022 World Cup starts. The host nation, Qatar, will play Ecuador in the first game. And from then on, the big sides will be coming out to play. Everybody loves the World Cup. And for all of us, it's something that was played in the summer. And this is different for many reasons, which have been raised elsewhere. This was corrupt from the beginning, and it hasn't been much better. In fact, it's got worse the more we learned about the host nation. But that's for another day. But it's a pleasure now to welcome John Giles and Liam Brady to look at the tournament overall. Liam, we always have loved the World Cup, and we've always seen the great players in it. There is a shadow over this World Cup because of the time of year it's being played in, for one thing, and because when Qatar were awarded the World Cup, they said they'd play it in the summer in air-conditioned stadiums, but that was untrue. They're playing it now. It isn't great for football, but still, it's notable because the best players in the world, or most of them, are going to be there. In the case of Lionel Messi and Ronaldo, Liam, the two great players of the modern era, this is the last World Cup, and that in itself makes it notable, doesn't it?
Yes, yeah. You know, we've seen these two guys now for the last 15 years, ever since they broke into their club teams, aiming at the very young age of 17 years of age, and they went on and had absolutely marvellous careers. The World Cup winners' title has avoided both of them.
Yep.
But they're going into this competition, I think, with decent chances, both sides, you know.
Yes.
You wonder if Ronaldo's going to be a help or a hindrance to his team and his manager, because it looks like that he has to be picked. On the other hand, Messi has kind of come good with Argentina. They won the Copa America.
Yeah.
And they've been on a long unbeaten run. They have a very strong team. And also Portugal have a lot of good players. So you never know. The crowning glory might await one of them, because both teams are very, very strong, Eamon.
Yeah, and it's the first time that they won the Copa America for 28 years. So, and one of the things they have now is a good goalkeeper. I think it's the lead goalkeeper. I'm not sure, but it's the Villa goalkeeper,
okay. Emiliano Martinez.
That's it. He's a very good goalkeeper.
He was at Arsenal as a kid, and then I was quite surprised when Arteta sold him. But he's a very good goalkeeper, and you know, he's only a young man, so he'll be very excited about going to this World Cup with a live chance of winning it.
Yeah, and they've been cursed with bad goalkeepers over the years. John, the same really point I want to make to you. We've admired these two players. They're the two great players of this generation, and there's no doubt at 37, Ronaldo will hardly play another World Cup, and Messi is 35, and he's unlikely to play either. So it's the end of an era in that sense.
Oh, yeah, it's been a great era. I mean,
yes.
Liam said, you're saying Messi and Ronaldo, you know, two of the best players ever. And it's strange that neither of them won the World Cup. Of course, they'd have to depend on the country to do that. But they've been a great asset to the game, and there's no doubt about that. They've continued from the previous great players before them. Had long, as we know now, long careers. I mean, so on a personal note, I'd like to see Messi do it.
Yes, and I mean, as Liam pointed out, they've won the Copa America, which is something they hadn't done for 28 years. They have had some dodgy keepers in the past. This guy is very, very good, and they have a decent draw. The only thing that's going against them is Didi's tipped them in the Racing Post to be the winners. When you look at the England team, John, they got to the final of the Euros. Of course, they were playing at home last year at Wembley. The criticism of Gareth Southgate has been he's too cautious. He doesn't release the potential of his attacking players, and they do okay, but in the end, there's not enough flair and there's not enough aggression in the team. What do you think?
I wouldn't necessarily agree with all of that.
Right.
They got to the final of the Europeans.
Yeah.
You know, and he took one of the biggest and bravest steps to put and a mistake, in my opinion, to put the penalty takers on when they went to extra time.
Yep.
So I don't see any lack of courage. I might see a lot of lack of ability in the England team.
Right.
You know, they don't have a real general in midfield. You know, Rice is a good player, and Bellingham, I think, is the one coming into it. I don't see them dominating teams from that particular position.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't doubt him. I would doubt what he did in terms of some of the mistakes he made.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't doubt his courage to do what he felt that needed to be done.
No, he's done very well. Liam, what's your take on that? They have some marvellous players, Mason Mount, Harry Kane. Unfortunately, they've lost two great fullbacks, the Chelsea fullbacks, Reece James and Ben Chilwell, which is really unfortunate. But they have fullbacks to come in. And they're in a group, Liam, with Iran, USA and Wales that gives them a real chance of getting out.
Oh, yeah, without any doubt. They'll get out of the group, Eamon. They should even win the group. But I'd be a little bit worried for England because so many of their players, you mentioned two really important players that are injured, the two full back.
Yes.
Kyle Walker is coming back after a long layoff.
Yes.
I don't know how he's going to be. Who's he going to play in goal? That's a difficult decision for him. Is it going to be Pope or is it going to be Pickford? Pickford has mistakes in him, as we all know. Harry Maguire, bang out of form. Defensively, they don't look great. Luke Shaw, never really rated him as a defensive fullback. He'd rather go forward than defend. John said they haven't got a kind of a director of the orchestra in midfield. They've got Bellingham and Rice, who are two hard-working players. I'm sure they'll start. Maybe not against Iran. Maybe you go for a more attacking team against Iran. But then you look up front. Sterling is having a terrible season, really out of form. So I'd be worried there. I think he's one of Gareth Southgate's favourites, Sterling.
Yeah.
And much will depend once more on Harry Kane in that centre forward position, Eamon. And
right.
Mason Mount, he could have a good World Cup. I would see England getting to the quarterfinals, but they'll be found out against some of the better teams then.
Yeah, and it's worth bearing in mind, I suppose, they got to the semi-finals last time, and really Croatia beat them when that was their best chance ever. Let me ask you about Argentina, Liam, and Messi, and the fact that they go into this having won the Copa America. They're on a run, and they have some very good players. Well, they have players like Di Maria, who I think is a really good player. They also have Nicolas Otamendi, who we will all remember at Manchester City being a bit of a headbanger. He's in the team, but they have a good goalkeeper now. And I fancy them or Brazil, because I think the European nations are weaker. What's your take on Argentina, Liam, and what chance do you give them?
Well, I give them a good chance, Eamon. You know, I would put them up there amongst the favourites, as you're doing as well.
Yeah.
I'd have my doubts about Otamendi, what we've seen, both at club level and in the national team in years gone past. But this new coach, Lionel Scaloni,
yes,
he's transformed the spirit in the team. They have a mentality now of winners. Romero, we've seen play for Spurs. He's a really good defender. And Martinez is a very good striker, plays for Inter Milan. And they've got Messi and Di Maria. So, they've got to be one of the contenders. But if I can open it up a bit, Eamon, I think the World Cup is wide open this year. We don't know how tired the players are going into it, having been playing in the Champions League in a condensed season, you know, lots of league games being played. So you don't really know how they're going to come out of it.
Yes.
But definitely, and I'd love to see her go back to Messi again. You'd love to see him have a great tournament.
Yep, I think we all would. John, just on Brazil, we know how good Thiago Silva is. We've seen him in recent weeks defending for Chelsea on his own. He's 37, but they have also got some good young players, two in particular. Vinicius Jr. plays for Real Madrid and Rodrigo also Real Madrid. One of them, Vinicius Jr. is 22, Rodrigo's 21. They're explosive players and they've done it for Carlos Ancelotti, and they are the type of player that Brazil are renowned for over the years.
Yeah, they were terrific players when I saw them. I didn't see much of them, Eamon.
Yeah. The other guy I have to mention, ask you and Liam actually, is Neymar. Now Neymar is a superstar, certainly in his own head, but he's not the most disciplined guy off the pitch, and he doesn't appear to be the most disciplined on the pitch. He's a major diver. How big a problem is that?
Well, it's always a problem, but he's very talented.
He is, yeah, very gifted.
Yeah. You know, there's no, when he, as I say, when he's on his day, and maybe in the World Cup, he could turn it on.
Yeah.
You know, he's capable of doing it, and you know, he's a danger. And I agree with you. There's times he doesn't make the most of his ability, but there are times he does as well. So he's a fellow that would have to be, if you're playing against him, carefully watched, and he might get a grip of himself for the World Cup, Eamon. It does happen. You know, he's on a big stage.
Yes,
a big stage, and it's possible he could do it.
Liam, what's your take on Brazil?
I think they've got a really good chance again, Eamon. You've gone through some of their players there. I'd have my doubts about Fred after what I've seen him with Manchester United. It looks like he might play Richarlison as a kind of a floating centre forward, you know, who's at Spurs and been at Everton, and we've seen him. But normally we've seen him operate on the left-hand side. I'd like to see Jesus playing, you know, the Arsenal striker.
Yes.
You know, although he's been short of goals lately, he's been playing really, really well. And I think his work rate alone, I think, would benefit that Brazilian team. But they've got Casemiro in midfield.
Yes.
You mentioned Vinicius. They've got loads of talented players. So, and if Neymar can just concentrate on his football and forget about all the antics, like he's only 2 goals away from equaling Pele's goals, the amount of goals.
Yeah, 75 goals he scored for Brazil. Yeah.
Yeah. So John said, you know, Neymar on his day is one of the most talented players in the world. If he can concentrate his mind, and I'd like to see Jesus and maybe Richarlison up front. That would be some forward line. So I give Brazil a big chance. Yeah,
I do too. They're my tip. But I'd love to see Messi win it and Argentina. Just on Gabriel Jesus, lads, he's played 56 times for Brazil. He scored 19 goals. And the one thing he hasn't done much of, Liam, at Arsenal, although he's been a great success for the club, he hasn't scored as many goals as you might expect. But he overall
started well, Eamon, didn't he? His goals were very important to Arsenal at the start of the season. I think he got about half a dozen early on, you know, but it's dried up since then. But his general play hasn't, you know. He's been a real inspiration for the guys around him, and I think he's made Arsenal's forward line really function. And I think if he was to be in that Brazilian centre forward role and allowed, you know, wonder and because he just has such a high work rate, I think it rubs off on the other players. So I'd like to see him in the Brazilian team, but you know, they have a variety of players they could pick. They always do. They have great forward players, but I give them a big chance. But if I had to pick Argentina or Brazil, I'd just favour Argentina.
Right. Now let me ask you, John, about Belgium. They're a team that everyone has been talking about forever. They're getting on now, but they have De Bruyne. They have some very, very good players, and yet they've never done it. I think they have a decent enough draw. They're in a group with Canada, Morocco, and Croatia, but they never get it done, John, do they?
No, as you say, with the players that they have, you know, going into competitions in recent years. They've been well fancied, and they haven't really done it in any of the competitions so far with the talent that they have. So Do they have a new manager around? Maybe it could be the manager.
No, the manager is the guy who was at Everton, Martinez. But they have Lukaku.
Oh, yes.
They have Lukaku up front. They've Eden Hazard, who's had a nightmare at Real Madrid for almost 3 seasons now. He has hardly played a game. They have De Bruyne, as I say, and they're rock solid. And they're rock solid with a proven goal scorer in Lukaku. And De Bruyne on his day, I know you and I, at least, I'm not sure about Liam, have our doubts about his commitment on big days. But they've been talked about as the coming team. Well, if this is their chance, because they have a fairly manageable group: Canada, Morocco, Croatia.
Well, it's when they get to the big boys that it really counts. As we know, you'd expect them to definitely get through. But they have been a disappointment, with the players that they've had going into these big tournaments. And you say now, a few of them are getting on a bit. We definitely all would have expected. Everybody, expected more from them. So maybe they might get a grip of themselves in this tournament and turn it on. And if they can make the most of the talent that they have, they certainly should be contenders.
Liam, your take on Belgium? We've seen enough of them for long enough now. They never seem to quite get it done, do they?
No. Well, it's still a very, very small nation. It's an amazing, for the population of that's there in Belgium, yes, how well they've done football-wise. They seem to have integrated a lot of Africans and Eastern Europeans over the years, and they have an excellent side now. You mentioned Lukaku. They've got Tielemans and Witsel. Yeah, Tielemans, Leicester City. We know him, very good player. Hazard has been a disappointment at Real Madrid, but big stage aim and big player.
Yes,
and De Bruyne likewise too. Excellent goalkeeper in the Real Madrid goalkeeper Courtois.
Yeah,
big strong lads at the back. I would make John Wright. I would make them contenders.
Yeah,
they have to be in the mix to be in the last 4, I would have said.
Okay, let's talk about France, John. Unfortunately, they've got Pogba is injured and he won't be there. But more importantly, I think Kante won't be there. He's torn his hamstring. And yet their record is good under Deschamps, the coach. And they're in a very manageable group. Tunisia, Australia, Denmark. Denmark won't be easy by any means. But they are the holders and defending champions. But the absence of Kante is a big deal, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I'd say, believe it or not, I think Pogba is a big miss for them as well.
Right.
But if you look at his career, he's always turned it on for France.
Yes.
In the last World Cup, he played well. He's played he's played better for France consistently than anywhere else I've seen him play, including Manchester United.
Yeah.
And it seems to be with him, and probably shouldn't be talking about him now, he's not even playing. But that he's in short-term stuff at France.
Yes.
He could, rather than the 48 match, 50 matches, 6 matches, St. Manchester United. That's the way I always felt he could turn it on. So I think it'd actually be a miss for France. I don't think he's a miss for Manchester United or some of the other teams he played for. But little Kante is a huge loss, Simon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Huge loss.
Yeah. Could we talk about some of the Premier League players in the context of their day jobs? Our partner now is, of course, supporting the stand on this special World Cup episode today. But many of our listeners will be already using now to stream Premier League matches this season. And for those of you who aren't, you can stream all the best Premier League action with a Now Sports and Sports Extra membership from as little as $11.99 without a contract. Now we're going to go on and talk about some other contenders, Germany in particular, who are always talked about as contenders. I'm not so sure they will be this time. I just want to ask both of you. Liam, I'll start with you about the time of year from the Premier League and indeed all the other leagues that this World Cup has been played. In the case of the Premier League, the first game after they come back, the final of the World Cup is December 18th, and the first series of Premier League games is Boxing Day, or Stephen's Day as we call it here. What effect is it going to have? The travelling, the heat, the stress of playing in a World Cup? Can they possibly be right when they get back to their clubs. People like Harry Kane, Virgil van Dijk, Mason Mount, Bernardo Silva. I mean, in Pep's case, Manchester City have 16 players there. I think Arsenal have 10 or 12, don't they, Liam?
Yeah, 10, yeah.
So what sort of nick are they going to be in when they get back?
Well, it depends how far they go in the competition, Eamon. Obviously, if they go all the way and then they have to come back, how many games is going to be in the World Cup? There's going to be 7, I think.
Yeah.
3 in the group stage, then 1 in the last 16, 1 in the last 8, semi-final and final. So let's say you go all the way and you're playing in the final. You've got 7 games to play, which is a lot, and then you come back and you're more or less straight away into it. So the guys who get to the last 4, I would say, are the ones you got to watch. But the others, before that, they're going to get a nice rest, I think, before the Premier League resumes, So it all depends. It's an unknown to us. We've never had a World Cup in the middle of a league season. So we don't really know. But, logic would tell you that if you go all the way or you go to the semi-final and you have to play 6 or even 7 games if you become finalists, you're going to be tired when you return. So we'll just have to wait and see who gets that far, Eamon. But others, like England, were to go out in the quarterfinals, you'd have a nice rest. You'd have a couple of weeks rest, 10 days rest before you resume your training again or your football again before the Premier League starts up. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, John, there's a huge advantage for, say, someone like Mo Salah or even Erling Haaland, who won't be going there. Salah can have a good rest, and he's probably due a good rest because he played in the African Cup of Nations, which was hard work. What effect do you think it can have if you were to go to, say, semi-finals, which is the ambition, I think, of England for sure? This idea that, you can just slip back into it. There's a full Premier League programme on Boxing Day. So this is tough, isn't it? And unfair in a way.
Well, it's ridiculous, Eamon.
Yeah.
To have a World Cup at this time of the year is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
And there's been lots of talk, and I'm sure it's true, about corruption in having a World Cup that's played in the middle of a season in a hot country. It's just outrageous.
That has no tradition in football, and that when it was given the World Cup in 2010, had no stadium. It had to build from scratch 7 stadiums and all the infrastructure. And I have to say, I'm not going to turn this into a sermon, but The Guardian has estimated somewhere around 5,600 migrant workers have died in appalling conditions. But we know it's peak corruption really in soccer. We know how corrupt soccer can be, but this was peak. But just to go back to this idea of the effect it could have. For example, Pep and Manchester City have 16 players there. Our friend Klopp has only 7 Liverpool players are there, so he won't be as frenzied and worried as Pep.
No, well, it's obviously common sense, Eamon. The better the players you have, like Manchester City and Liverpool, go to a World Cup go to a tournament like the World Cup, the best players are going to win it, Eamon. So therefore, the best players are going to play more than anybody else.
Yes.
Some of the teams we know, bother knocked out in the first round, the second round, there's no problem, you're just out. But that's like the best players in Manchester City, Liverpool, and Arsenal go there. There's a good chance that 2 of them, at least 2 of them, of those players we're talking about, could get to the finals.
Yes.
Now you're in a bit of bother, because again you're playing in the heat. It's a huge competition. The weather conditions are not good. And then you're straight back into it again. Don't forget, they're pushing it all the way now.
Yes.
To get the matches done before the World Cup.
Yeah.
So the lads have played a lot of matches already, but definitely it's got to affect the best players who are playing in the best teams.
Yeah.
And like if you look at, say, in the Premier League at the moment, the likes of Brighton and the other teams down near the bottom of the league, I don't think hardly any of their players are picked to go to it.
Yeah, so they get a break.
They'll get a break. They'll have a nice long rest. And as Liam made a good point. I mean, if the lads are knocked out early, then you get a rest anyway.
Yeah,
but that's if you're knocked out early. But if you're a manager like Klopp and Guardiola, you'd be hoping that your players would be knocked out. But there are a lot of those players that will get to at least to the semis, because they're the best players, and they suffer for it. And then, apart from being tired, there's an injury situation there as well, as we know. So it's the last thing managers need in the middle of a season, Eamon.
Yeah, Liam, just let me put that point about injury to you, and also back to John. The first 3 games for every nation are played in 8 days. I think that's too much.
Well, everything is condensed, Eamon. We've had the Premier League, the amount of games that they've tried to throw in before they went to the World Cup. The Champions League as well. There was games more often than usual. So this is the price. This is the price that football's paying.
Yes.
For having sold it to Qatar.
Yes.
It's FIFA that's have made this call, and we all know why it was made, because it was made on the back of the executive committee getting a lot of money, and many of them were arrested after
the Americans got involved and did arrest a number 8 of them, but also Sepp Blatter and Michel Platini lost their jobs. And Blatter was the president of FIFA, Platini the president of UEFA, and the French were up to their oxters in it. I mean, they actually got a contract from Qatar to build fighter jets worth 16 billion. This was when Sarkozy was the president of France. So this murky stuff, never mind the poisonous and vile prejudice against gay people that is part of their law. All of this is mixed up in what is something very, very...
and the football, the clubs, the league clubs are paying the price for this decision.
Yes.
And ultimately it'd be the players, and the ones that John's mentioned there, the very best players going to the end of the competition, they're the ones that are really going to pay the price. They'll risk an injury.
Yes.
They'll be jaded, tired. So, but it is what it is, isn't it? Once the football gets underway, I think all us football fans are going to be watching to see who's going to be playing well, the teams, who's going to come out of it, who's going to play great football. The thing will be concentrated on the football, but it's been a PR disaster for FIFA and for Qatar, to be quite honest.
Just to go back to you, John, on the question of the big players like Harry Kane, Virgil van Dijk, and Bernardo Silva, who I know is a real special favourite of yours, and you've managed it. It must be hell sitting there for Pep with 16 players out there, and for Jurgen Klopp as well, and indeed for Mikel Arteta at Arsenal. It must be hell sitting at home watching it, mustn't it?
Terrible, Andy. What can he do about it?
Nothing.
They're their players. You're trying to, all the managers now we know, looking after the players as best you possibly can and trying to play teams and give lads a rest. As Liam mentioned beforehand, the season's been packed in to get matches in before the World Cup. Yeah. And then you come back to that. And you're working day in, day out to get your players right. And through no fault of your own, they're going on an international competition. We've already spoken about it, which is dreadful to have at this, totally corrupt to have at this stage of the season. It's a total mess as far as the players are concerned. And the managers on all the clubs, Liverpool, Arsenal, Manchester United, any of them, Man City, can just sit there and hope and pray that a lot of the major players are not going to be injured, and not just injured, overtired as well. It's a dreadful situation to be in. Yeah,
Liam, just to finish us off now, I want you to tell me who's going to win. I think you've hinted already. And also where England are going to finish. And the other thing I want to talk to both of you about is Germany. Didi Hammam has a piece in the Racing Post today. He says he doesn't think Germany can win it. They have a new manager, Hansi Flick. He used to manage Bayern Munich. They have a lot of good young players in their team, but Didi thinks they'll fall short. What about Germany, Liam?
Yeah, I don't see enough really world-class players in the team, Eamon. It looks like Havertz might
Yeah.
He leads the line. I haven't been that impressed with him at Chelsea.
No, I haven't either.
No. Sané, we've seen him at Manchester City. He's now at Bayern Munich.
Yep.
Not too sure about him either. I think Germany are much of a muchness, to be quite honest. Yep. They say never write off the Germans, and I know that's been the case down through various tournaments. But for me, they're not potential winners. No, not for me. Not for me. If I was going for a team that I think has an outside chance, I'd go for Uruguay, Eamon.
Yeah, I think we talked about this the other day, and I had a look at their squad, Liam, and they've got some real good players and experienced players.
Yeah, well, they always play with that dogged spirit, don't they, Uruguay? You know, with Godin at the back and
Jimenez
Suarez up front. They've got Jimenez at the back as well. They've got Nunes as well, and although Nunes has had a bit of a hard time at Liverpool, I thought the last couple of games he's looked much better, and I think this could be a stage that he will relish. So I'm going for Uruguay to get to the last four at an outside chance. That would be my outside chance. Argentina would have my money on, and Uruguay as an outside chance.
Right. Well, I think I'm going to follow you because I actually fancy Brazil, but certainly on Uruguay, they're 50-1. Sorry about this, John. I know you. I know you don't.
I'm okay, Eamon. You're entertaining me anyway.
They're 50-1, Liam, Uruguay, and I'm looking at their squad in front of me, and it really is. They have Cavani as well, Edison Cavani.
All these guys will be wanting them. This will be their last tournament, won't it? Cavani, Suarez, Godin, but. They're a proud side, aren't they, the Uruguayans? They've always been difficult to beat,
Tough as well.
Tough. Yeah, sometimes overly tough. Sometimes they go overboard with that. But that would be my tip. And Nunes to be top goal scorer at a big price as well.
Okay, and I'm just looking at the draw they've got, Liam. Portugal, Ghana, Uruguay, and Korean Republic, which I think is South Korea.
South Korea, yeah. It's not an easy group by any means. Not an easy group by any means, but I can see them come out of it and go from strength to strength.
Okay, John, I know you're not a gambling man. How about having a five or a...
I'm not even looking at the odds, Eamon. I'll stick with Argentina to win it.
Brilliant.
I want Messi to do it, and I think he would assume it's his last competition at that level.
Yeah.
To really turn it on.
Yeah, well, I mean, they have a very manageable group as well. Saudi Arabia play Argentina in the first game, actually. Mexico and Poland are the other two teams in that group. Now, we know the Mexicans can be pretty tough. They're not as, they're decent, tough and competitive, but it gives them a chance. A good chance. So you're going... Are you going Argentina, John?
I'll go with Argentina, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going Brazil, and Liam is going Uruguay and Argentina, Liam. Argentina first, yeah?
Argentina, yeah, and Uruguay is an outsider.
Okay, well, that brings us to the end of this preview of the World Cup. We will have Liam and John to talk to us from time to time through the competition about the big games, both in previews and reviews.